Shocking images continue to surface of last week's violent storming of Congress. This video shows a police officer dragged, kicked, punched, and even bashed with a pole flying the American flag.
Clerk will report the title of the resolution.
Democrats in the House of Representatives want Donald Trump gone. They've moved ahead with a resolution urging the Vice President to invoke the 25th Amendment, which can remove the President from office.
Section 4 of the 25th Amendment to declare President Donald J. Trump incapable of executing the duties of his office and to immediately exercise powers as acting president.
But, as expected,
I object.
Objection is heard.
Republicans blocked the resolution, triggering a full vote on the House floor tomorrow. If that fails, Democrats will take a second stab at impeachment.
President Trump is still in charge, and part of the reason why Congress is talking about impeachment right now is because he is not being helpful in trying to guarantee the security of the inauguration. In fact, he seems to be doing more harm than good.
All right, friends. Adam here, and the news is not good. Capitol Hill is in full crisis mode. Late-night emergency calls, midnight letters, and lawmakers demanding the president's removal before dawn. The intensity is real, and Congress is actively discussing emergency removal on an unprecedented timeline. The sheer scope of this movement is staggering. We're talking about more than 200 lawmakers from across the political spectrum, Democrats, independents, and even some people you would never expect to agree on anything. They're all on the same page, all saying the exact same thing. Get him out now, not tomorrow, not next week, not after further deliberation or investigation, right now, immediately, before dawn. And they're not being shy about it. They're not whispering behind closed doors or having quiet conversations in the hallways. They're standing in front of cameras, giving formal statements, putting their names on official letters, and going on the record saying that this needs to happen immediately.
While Democrats are at least attempting to move ahead on impeachment, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is throwing cold water on that move. Let's go to NBC's Sahil Kapoor, who's joining me now. I have a feeling you're going to pick up where Josh left off, Sahil. What are lawmakers saying about all this?
Alex, there's anger, there's fury, there's dismay, and most notably among Democrats, there's determination to do something about President Trump. They don't want to be the opposition party that sits back and doesn't act on something as grave as this. Now, the top two Democrats in Congress, Nancy Pelosi in the House and Chuck Schumer in the Senate, have said that the president should resign, the cabinet should remove him. As Josh pointed out, that is looking highly unlikely, and the only option they have here, if that doesn't happen, is impeachment. They're already circulating among Democrats articles of impeachment. One single article called Incitement of Insurrection that accuses the president of willfully inciting violence against the government of the United States, a charge every bit as serious as it sounds. That is an article of impeachment that Democrats appear likely to take up as early as next week if there's no intervening action between then.
The level of unanimity on this among Democrats is absolutely remarkable. You rarely see this kind of agreement in Congress on anything, let alone something as dramatic as removing a sitting president from office. This isn't just political theater or performative outrage designed to fire up the base. This is Congress treating the situation with the same urgency you'd treat a building that's about to collapse or a ship that's taking on water. They're acting like the White House is on fire and they need to evacuate before the whole structure burns down around them. The top leadership is leading the charge. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, people who have been around Washington forever and understand the gravity of what they're saying. They're standing up publicly and saying that this guy should not remain in office one day longer. These are veterans of American politics. They're not naive. They understand the weight of what they're saying when they call for removal of a sitting president. They know how serious that is. They know how historic that would be. And yet they're still saying it needs to happen immediately.
Tonight calls for accountability as the horror of the siege on the Capitol comes into clear view. Rioters seen beating an officer with an American flag. President Trump's supporters trying to hunt down his own vice president after he refused to overturn the results of the election, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence! House Democrats are now moving quickly to try and remove Trump from office, introducing a single article of impeachment, charging the president with incitement of insurrection for inciting violence against the government of the United States by urging his followers to march on the Capitol.
Well, sadly, the person who's running the executive branch is a deranged, unhinged, dangerous President of the United States.
The House Speaker detailing to 60 Minutes how her staffers hid, horrified, as the mob overtook her offices.
The crazy part is that this has happened more than once. I'm not talking about hypothetical scenarios here. This is real. This actually happened after January 6th when the Capitol got stormed by a violent mob. It's happening again right now because of Trump's extreme threats toward Iran and all this other wild stuff going down. Congress keeps pulling the same playbook out and basically saying, we need to use every tool we have to remove them. So, what are those tools exactly? Well, that's where it gets really interesting, because you've got three main options that Congress keeps talking about. The first option is resignation. Can you believe they're even suggesting that? They're basically telling Trump to just step down voluntarily. That's the simplest solution. It's clean, it's quick, it avoids all the messy constitutional procedures. But let's be realistic. That's never going to happen. Trump is not the type to resign. He's not a quitter. He fights. He always fights. The second option is impeachment and conviction. Full trial, the whole thing. The House impeaches, the Senate convicts, and boom, he's out. That's the traditional constitutional mechanism. It's been used before, though never successfully.
The Speaker is now pressuring Pence to act first, urging the Vice President to invoke the 25th Amendment and immediately remove Trump from office. It seems highly unlikely, but Pence notably hasn't publicly rejected the idea. The Vice President seen at the White House today, speaking with the President for the first time since the riot. Several members of the President's party, like Senator Pat Toomey, say Trump should resign.
I do think the president committed impeachable offenses.
Some of the president's top allies are also turning on him.
So you think it was an impeachable offense?
Before Jordan. Oh, sure. Yeah. If inciting to insurrection isn't, then I don't really know what is.
Tonight, prominent freshman Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who attended the rally with the president, said it was a, quote, major mistake for Trump to tell the crowd to head to the Capitol and that he'd be there with them.
He never should have directed that crowd towards the Capitol building because there was a bad outcome was destined at that point.
But even after the riot, Cawthorn and more than 100 House Republicans stood by the president and voted to overturn the will of the voters. And tonight, the vast majority of congressional Republicans aren't saying one way or another if Trump should go.
And then there's the third option, which is the 25th Amendment. That's the nuclear option. That's where the cabinet basically says the president can't do the job anymore, and they remove him. Congress has to vote. It's quick, it's brutal, and it's constitutional. But here's the thing that really gets me about all this. It's the urgency of it all. These aren't people sitting around having philosophical debates about the Constitution. These are members of Congress sending urgent letters at midnight, calling emergency meetings, talking about reconvening Congress immediately. They're not waiting for the next session. They're not scheduling a vote for next month. They're saying, get back to DC now. We might need to do this. That's the tone we're hearing. That's the level of panic in Washington right now. When Congress is calling for emergency sessions, when they're sending letters at midnight, when they're using language about needing to act before something catastrophic happens, you know the situation is serious. And look, whether you support Trump or you don't, you have to admit that's pretty intense. That's not normal Washington stuff. That's Congress, basically saying we are in a genuine emergency right now, and we might have to use extreme measures. The first time this happened was after January 6th in 2021. The Capitol got attacked. People got hurt. People got killed. And Congress wakes up and is like, what do we do? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we remove the guy who was basically encouraging all this? And more than 200 of them are saying we need him out of office immediately. That was January 2021. That's not ancient history. That's recent enough that people still remember exactly where they were when they found out Congress was demanding Trump's removal. People remember how shocking it was. The shockwaves from that day rippled through Congress in ways that changed how they viewed their constitutional responsibilities. Now fast forward to the current day. Trump's been back in office for a while. Things are calming down, or so people thought. And then boom, new crisis. Trump starts making crazy threats. He's talking about Iran like he's ready to go to war tomorrow morning. He's doing stuff that makes people's jaws drop. And Congress is right back to it. Same demands, same urgent tone. We need to remove him. Now, this is the pattern that's emerging. Crisis happens. Congress demands removal. Time passes. Things seem normal. Then another crisis. And Congress makes the same demands all over again. The question that's starting to haunt Washington is whether this pattern will ever break. Okay, so let's go back to January 6th, 2021 for a second, because that's where this whole story really kicks off. The Capitol gets attacked, a mob storms the building, people are fighting with police officers, there's chaos everywhere. Members of Congress are literally running for their lives, hiding in offices, scared out of their minds. And when it's all over, when the dust settles, Congress basically wakes up in a cold sweat like, oh my God, we need to do something about this right now. The emotion in the Capitol building was unlike anything anyone had experienced before. Rage, fear, a sense that democracy itself was under attack. And it wasn't abstract, it was happening in real time to them personally. These were elected officials trapped inside a building being breached by a violent mob. And the consensus among Democrats is pretty immediate. Trump encouraged this. Trump told people to go down to the Capitol. Trump basically greenlit a violent attack on Congress. So, the question becomes, what do we do? How do we make sure he can't do something like this again? That's when you start seeing all these letters, all these statements, more than 200 lawmakers saying the same thing. We need him removed from office immediately. And they're not shy about what they mean. Pelosi, who was Speaker at the time, is basically saying publicly on television that this president should not remain in office one day longer. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, same thing. Immediate removal, unfit, dangerous. These are formal statements. These are words being spoken in press conferences. This is Congress on record saying the president needs to go. It needs to go fast. Now, here's where the confusion usually happens. Most people hear about this and they think, okay, so they're going to impeach him. But impeachment at that moment is actually complicated because impeachment takes time. You've got to investigate. You've got to have hearings. You've got to debate it. You've got to vote. And Congress is looking at the calendar and going, wait, Trump's still president for like 2 more weeks? What if he does something crazy in the next 2 weeks? What if he starts a war? What if he launches nuclear weapons? What if he tries another coup? These aren't paranoid fantasies. These are legitimate constitutional concerns. When you believe a sitting president might attempt another violent act, you can't just wait out the clock. You have to act. So, that's why you start hearing about the 25th Amendment so much. And this is important to understand because a lot of people don't actually know how it works. Let me break it down for you. The 25th Amendment was passed after JFK got assassinated because they basically realized, hey, what if the president becomes unable to do his job? Like, what if he's in a coma? What if he's mentally incapacitated? What if he's a danger to the country? The 25th Amendment says basically the cabinet can vote to say, yeah, the president can't do this job anymore. And boom, the vice president takes over temporarily at first, but then Congress gets to vote on it. And if Congress agrees, and you need a 2/3 majority in both chambers, then the president is done. That's it. He's removed permanently. So, when Congress is talking about the 25th Amendment in January 2021, they're saying, okay, cabinet, do your job. Tell us that Trump is unfit. Then we'll take a vote and boom, he's out. It's faster than impeachment. It's constitutional. It's meant for exactly this kind of situation. But here's the thing. The cabinet didn't really move. Some people called for it. Mike Pence basically got pressured to do it, but it didn't happen. So, Congress is frustrated. They're like, okay, fine, we'll impeach him. And they do. They impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection. But, and here's the thing that's wild, the Senate votes and there's not enough votes to convict him. So, he stays in office for those final 2 weeks. The vote falls short of the 2/3 majority needed. Trump survives the impeachment trial. Democrats feel defeated, but their concern about what Trump might do in those final days never goes away. They're watching him closely. They're worried. And then Trump leaves office and the immediate crisis passes. But the precedent has been set. Congress has shown it's willing to use extreme measures if necessary. They've proven they'll go through the constitutional process to try to remove a president if they believe he's a threat to the nation. Now, jump forward to the current moment. Trump's back in office. And yeah, there's been some time gone by. Things have kind of normalized. People aren't protesting in the streets every day anymore. The news cycle has moved on to other stuff. Trump's doing president stuff, making policy, typical presidency things. And then, boom, something happens that basically freaks everybody out again. Trump starts making these extreme threats toward Iran. Like wild, aggressive, I'm ready to start a war kind of threats. And Congress basically loses it all over again. And this time, there's no excuse. There's no, oh, he's about to leave office anyway. He's been in office for a while. He's got years left potentially. And Congress is like, we cannot wait this out. This guy is too dangerous. The concern isn't just theoretical anymore. It's active. It's current. It's happening right now. And Congress realizes they might be stuck in this situation for years if Trump keeps behaving this way. So, you see the same pattern all over again. Urgent letters, public statements, Democrats demanding immediate removal. This time, they're also suggesting that Trump resign on his own. Like, just quit, step down, save everybody the trouble. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Trump's not going to resign. He's never been the resignation type. But Congress keeps asking anyway, because they feel like they have to try every option before they resort to the constitutional removal mechanisms. So, the question everyone's asking is, would Congress actually try to remove him? Like, would they actually go through with impeachment or the 25th Amendment? And the answer is probably not, right? Because you need Republican support to convict him in a Senate trial, or you need Republican cabinet members to vote that he's unfit, and Republicans are not on board with that. But that's not really the point here. The point is that Congress has reached this place where they're openly saying we have these tools and we might have to use them. It's like Congress is basically saying we are prepared to do extreme stuff if we have to. And that's huge. That's not normal. That's not how things usually work in Washington. Congress and the president are supposed to have checks and balances. They're supposed to push back on each other, but they're not usually talking about removing the president from office as a regular tool. When Congress keeps coming back to this, they're signaling something important. They're saying the normal mechanisms aren't working. They're saying the normal checks aren't enough to contain this president. And listen, I want to be clear about something. When Congress does this, when they're pushing for removal, they're not making empty threats. They're laying out the actual constitutional mechanisms. They're writing letters that cite the exact amendment they want to use. They're explaining the voting processes. They're studying precedent. They're serious about this. They're not just venting on social media. They're saying, here's how we would actually do this, which, is both kind of reassuring because it means there are constitutional safeguards in place if things ever get really bad, but also kind of scary, right? Because it means Congress thinks things might get really bad. It means they're studying how to remove a sitting president because they genuinely believe they might have to do it. All right, so let's break this thing down because there's a lot happening here, and I want to make sure you understand what's actually going on and why it matters so much. There's a lot of complex constitutional stuff here, a lot of political dynamics, a lot of history, but I'm going to simplify it because the core of this story is actually pretty straightforward. Congress is saying the president is dangerous, and they might remove him. That's the headline. That's what we're dealing with. So, when Congress wants to get rid of a president, they've got basically three options. Option one is resignation. That's the easiest option, right? President just says, nope, I'm out. I quit. Richard Nixon did this back in 1974. He realized he was going to get impeached and convicted, so he just resigned. Clean, done. Congress is basically like, okay, Trump, you could do this. You could just leave. And obviously Trump's not going to do that. He's not a quitter. He fights. So, resignation's off the table. We can count on that. Trump will never voluntarily step down just because Congress is demanding it. He's made that clear throughout his entire career. Option two is impeachment and conviction. This is what Congress actually tried in January 2021. Basically, the House votes to impeach the president, then the Senate votes whether to convict him. If the Senate convicts him, and you need a 2/3 majority, he's out forever. Can't run for president again, nothing. He's done. This is the traditional method that the framers of the Constitution built in. It's supposed to be the ultimate check on presidential power. It's been used before, but never successfully, never resulted in removal. Andrew Johnson came close, but the Senate fell one vote short of conviction. Trump was impeached twice, but the Senate never convicted him either time. The problem with impeachment is it takes time. And Congress feels like they don't have time. When Trump's doing crazy stuff, when Congress thinks he's an immediate threat, they're like, okay, we need faster options. Impeachment is probably going to take weeks, maybe longer. And Congress is thinking, what if something even worse happens in the meantime? What if while we're in the middle of an impeachment trial, Trump does something that escalates the crisis even further? That's where option 3 comes in, the 25th Amendment. And this is the nuclear option because it's quick. The cabinet basically says the president's unfit. The vice president becomes acting president immediately. Then Congress votes on it within like 21 days. If Congress votes to keep the VP in charge, then the president's removed permanently. It's fast. It's constitutional. It's brutal. The 25th Amendment was created for situations exactly like this. A president who is a danger to the nation. This is what it was built for. The reason Congress keeps talking about all three of these is because they're literally laying out every possible tool they have. It's like they're saying, look, we have options. If things get bad enough, we will use them. And that sends a message. It sends a message to Trump that Congress is serious. It sends a message to the cabinet that Congress might be ready to back them up. So, here's what's really fascinating about this pattern. Capitol gets attacked. Congress freaks out, demands removal. Iran threats happen. Congress freaks out, demands removal. It's like Congress has basically set up this trigger system, right? Something bad happens and boom, automatic response, remove him. And this tells us something important about how serious Congress takes Trump's behavior. They're treating each incident like it's part of a pattern. Each time they see evidence that Trump is unfit and dangerous. Each time they think, yep, still need to get rid of him. This repetition is significant. They keep coming back to it. Different crises trigger the same response every time. And honestly, can you imagine being in that situation? Like you're a congressman or congresswoman, you've already tried to remove the president once. It didn't work. And now here's another crisis. And you're sitting there thinking, are we going to have to do this again? Are we going to have to go through the whole removal process again? That's got to be exhausting. That's got to be terrifying. That's got to make you feel like things are genuinely out of control. If you were voting to impeach the first time and then something else happens, that's not just frustrating. That's demoralizing. That's a sign that the normal political mechanisms aren't working to solve this problem. When Congress says they want Trump removed before dawn, what do you think that means? It means they think something really bad could happen at any moment. It means they don't feel like they have time to wait around. It means they're treating this like a genuine emergency. This isn't metaphorical language. This is Congress actually believing that there's a time sensitivity to this crisis. That every hour that Trump remains in office is another hour he could do something catastrophic. That's what before dawn means. We need this done now. We need this done tonight. We need this done before morning comes. And that's different from normal political disagreements, right? Like if Congress just disagrees with Trump's policies, they can debate it. They can vote on it. They can do it the normal way. But when Congress is like, we need this done immediately, that suggests they think there's an actual threat, an actual danger, something that requires immediate action. And the members of Congress are using language that reflects that. They're saying, he's a threat to national security, he's unfit, he's dangerous. That's emergency language. That's crisis language. That's the kind of language you use when you genuinely believe that waiting could result in disaster. Congress actually has the power to do this. They have the power to remove a president. It's in the Constitution. And when Congress keeps talking about using that power, they're basically reminding everyone, hey, we have this ability. We might use it. It's a warning. It's a threat. And it matters. Because even if Congress never actually uses this power, the fact that they're talking about it changes everything. It changes how Trump's perceived. It changes how government works. It changes the whole dynamic of Washington. Look, let's be real for a second. In American history, we've never removed a president, ever. Andrew Johnson got impeached. He almost got convicted, but the Senate came up one vote short. Richard Nixon resigned before he could get impeached. But nobody's actually been removed through impeachment and conviction. Nobody's ever been removed through the 25th Amendment either. So when Congress is seriously talking about these options, they're talking about doing something that's literally never happened before in American history. That's huge. That's constitutional crisis territory. And the reason it matters is because it shows how far the relationship between Congress and Trump has deteriorated. Congress isn't just disagreeing with him. Congress is saying, this guy fundamentally cannot be trusted with the presidency. We might have to remove him. That's a really dramatic thing to say about a sitting president. It's the kind of thing you only say when you genuinely believe democracy itself is in danger. So, here's the real question. What happens now? Is Congress actually going to try to remove Trump? Probably not in the immediate future, unless something even crazier happens. But Congress has made it clear that it's on the table. If Trump keeps doing wild stuff, if he keeps making extreme threats, Congress might actually go for it. Even if Congress doesn't actually remove Trump, the fact that they're talking about it changes everything. It changes behavior. It creates pressure. Trump's basically operating under a permanent threat of removal. Congress is basically saying, keep doing crazy stuff and we'll take you out. So, we're basically in this situation where Congress is on the edge, ready to act, waiting to see what Trump does next. Because honestly, if it comes to that, if Congress actually votes to remove Trump, that's going to be the biggest constitutional moment in modern American history. That's going to change the country. That's going to shift everything we know about presidential power. And that's exactly why everyone's watching. That's why Congress keeps bringing this up, because they understand this moment right now could go in a lot of different directions. We're living through historic times and nobody knows exactly how this story ends. So, buckle up, because if you think Washington's tense right now, wait till you see what happens next. The members of Congress are not backing down. They're not going to let this go. They've made their position clear, and they're prepared to follow through if necessary. The coming days are going to be absolutely critical. Every move Trump makes will be scrutinized. Every statement will be analyzed. And Congress will be watching, waiting for the moment when they decide they've had enough. This isn't over. This is just the beginning of the next phase of this ongoing constitutional drama. The Capitol has erupted before. It will erupt again. And this time, the outcome might be different. The pressure is building. The tension is mounting. And everyone in Washington knows that something has to give. Whether it's Trump changing his behavior, Congress actually following through on removal, or some other resolution nobody has predicted yet, the status quo cannot continue. The system is straining under the weight of this crisis, and something will eventually break. The only question is what breaks first and how it all ends. So, stay tuned, because you're watching history unfold in real time. This is the moment when American democracy is being tested like never before. This is the moment when the constitutional safeguards that the founders built are being pushed to their limits. And the outcome will determine not just the future of this presidency, but the future of the republic itself. The founding fathers created these mechanisms because they understood that there might come a day when they would be needed. They understood that no system of government is perfect, and that extraordinary circumstances might require extraordinary measures. And now, more than 2 centuries later, those mechanisms are being seriously considered for the first time in American history. Congress is weighing an impossible choice between honoring constitutional traditions and protecting the country from what many see as an existential threat. The decision will set a precedent for the future of the presidency, and the gravity is not lost on anyone in Washington.